Republican defenders of Donald Trump keep arguing that there's no way there was quid pro quo because in order for a quid pro quo to occur, Volodymyr Zelensky needed to know and understand that Donald Trump's intentions were to dig up political dirt on his political rival in order to release military funding that Ukraine desperately needed. Now we have an abundance of evidence indicating that the Ukrainian government absolutely did know there was a quid pro quo in play. So this is new reporting by the New York Times. In a flurry of WhatsApp messages and meetings in Ukraine's capital, Kiev, over several days, senior aides debated the point. Avoiding partisan politics in the United States had always been the first rule of Ukrainian foreign policy, but the military aid was vital to the war against Russian-backed separatist forces in eastern Ukraine, a conflict that has cost 13,000 lives since it began in 2014. So internally in Ukraine, government officials were debating what they needed to do to move forward. What was the best choice? Because on one hand, they understood that it would be disastrous to get involved in domestic politics in the United States, but they also understood that if they didn't play ball with Trump and they didn't get that $400 million in military aid, the country's future was in jeopardy because of aggression by the Russian government. So Zelensky's staff actually ultimately decided that they had no choice but to comply with Donald Trump's demands. Aides were arguing in favor of bowing to what was demanded. They were willing to do so despite the risk of losing partisan support in the United States by appearing to assist Trump's re-election bid. The cost was high, and that's a statement by Petro Burkovsky, who actually is very close to the Ukrainian government and has some insight into the dealings that were happening. A tug of war ensued between a senior aide to Zelensky, Andrei Yermak, and another of Trump's envoys to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, over the wording of the proposed public statement. Volker went so far as to draft a statement for Zelensky that mentioned both investigations. And the two investigations, of course, were one, the investigation into the Bidens, and two, the investigation into Ukrainian meddling into the US elections. That's a conspiracy theory that Donald Trump has really latched onto. Drums.
Yes, indeed. Look, guys, this was, again, one of the last threads that they had, the Republicans. Well, look, Zelensky said once in public that there was no pressure, so Trump must be innocent. Well, now internal reporting shows that Zelensky absolutely was pressured, knew he was being pressured, was about to go on CNN and say, yes, we will investigate the Bidens until Congress got mad. We'll get to that in a second, right? And in fact, our own diplomats wrote out a statement for him saying, here it is, you must say that Donald Trump's political opponent is being investigated by your government. There is absolutely no question in the real world. I mean, cable news can have a conversation about real world versus bizarro world. But on this planet, there's absolutely no question that they pressured and that there was a quid pro quo and the Ukrainians knew it.
So Kurt Volker, who is a US official, is writing this statement for Zelensky, right? And Yermak, who is the aide for Zelensky, starts to push back and he's like, okay, look, we really need to consider the ramifications in the future. And so Yermak pushed back, suggesting language that mentioned investigations, but in general terms, so as not to antagonize the Democrats. So look, they're thinking ahead in the future. What if the Democrats are in charge in the future and we're antagonizing them through this statement that Volker has prepared for us? We really need to be cautious moving forward. But again, this is further proof that shows there was a quid pro quo. The Ukrainian officials were debating about what to do, what the next steps needed to be. And also, even as Yermak negotiated the wording in August, the stakes were clear. While rumors had been swirling for months about a possible hold on military aid, by early August, high-level Ukrainian officials had confirmed the freeze. So again, every time you hear the nonsense talking point from Republican lawmakers who are looking to get reelected, and they say things like, oh, well, you can't have a quid pro quo without a quo. There was a quo. It's obvious, it's clear. They absolutely knew what was going on. They knew that that money was being dangled in front of them and they wouldn't get it unless they made this public statement about an investigation into the Bidens. Now, where were they supposed to make this announcement? On Fareed Zakaria's show on CNN. That's what Trump wanted.
Yeah, and as it turns out, they got lucky because he was booked. He was definitely going to do it. And
on September 13th.
Yes, and then Congress stepped in and said, what are you doing? Because they got wind of the fact that the aid that they had authorized was being held up. Like, you can't hold up that aid. It's already authorized. Give us a reason why you're holding it up. And the White House is like, I don't know, against corruption in Ukraine. They're like, no, release the aid. So the aid gets released. Zelensky immediately cancels his appearance on Fareed Zakaria. Why? Because now he doesn't have to say things that aren't true. He doesn't have to say that he's investigating Biden and get involved in American politics. Look, guys, this is Trump calls it anti-corruption when he goes after the Bidens. I know, hilarious, right? But remember Sondland's testimony from just a couple of days ago. This is the end. There's no question about it. He said, quote, I said that the resumption of the US aid would likely not occur until Ukraine provided the public anti-corruption statement that we had been discussing for many weeks. End of this. Okay, over. OVAH, definitely quid pro quo, no doubt about it. And by the way, I'll go further. Anyone arguing the opposite is an obvious liar. They're biased, they have a political agenda, and they are desperately trying to cover up the reality. But anyone who can read can tell that this is clearly the case, no question about it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.